Hello guys, it's been a while since I made a long form tutorial like this, so I'm gonna introduce myself. My name is Taka Art, and I make Blender tutorials and other stuff now and again for you guys to learn. In this tutorial, I'm gonna teach you all how I made these mushrooms grow around these trees. In this case, it's proximity, so that wherever I place something in this tree collection, mushrooms will grow around the base of it. There's obviously a lot more complicated and more complex stuff in the scene, but I'm only going to limit myself to these mushrooms so that we can, focus things one at a time. Later down the road, I'll teach you how I made this fire, this sort of low poly fire, and I already showed how I made fireflies in a previous tutorial that I will link below, and it'll probably appear in a card up above. So if we were to quickly look at the scene, you could just see fireflies here in the background, and if I press play, they dance around. Anyways, let's get to the new tutorial. So with that, let's start a new scene. And with this new scene, we are going to add a plane, scale it up, make sure to hit Control A, apply scale. We're going to enter edit mode heading tab and subdivide our plane by 200. Actually, not 200. Let's just do 50 so it's not that heavy. This is because proximity node requires the use of actual points on the faces. So if you had one plane, think of it like when you do weight painting. It, if I had 50 subdivisions, I could paint as much as I want. But if I only had one face and I went into weight painting, I can only paint these corners. Same thing with the proximity node. It takes into account the subdivision of the target mesh of the thing you're putting geometry nodes on. So let's add geometry nodes into this mesh, call it shrooms, and now we're gonna add our trees. So I'm gonna actually use the same assets that I showed you in the show intro, and that's gonna be in this forest set all in Blender. It is a paid asset pack. I did pay for this. I will link it below if I can find it again to for you guys if you are interested. But yeah, it just to keep it out there, it is a paid resource. So we are gonna look for our trees. So let's scale these down a little bit so that they fit within the scene and apply their scale. Now with these three, I'm going to add them into a new collection called trees. And now we need to bring them the mushrooms. So here are my mushrooms. I'm going to bring in and these are going to be my mushrooms. Select them all. We are going to put them in a new collection called shrooms, and we're going to hide them below the world. Now in geometry nodes, back on the plane, if you want to add elevation to it and all that stuff, I have a separate tutorial on how to do that. I'll also link that below, or have it in the little card up above, but I'm not going to show that here just to keep things smooth. So we are going to add a distribute points on faces, and we're going to rejoin the original geometry so we can bring back the floor. Now we are going to need this here in order to tell geometry nodes where our trees are. So if we get trees, bring that in, separate children. You can press reset children. I'm not sure what that does really in this case, but switch it to relative, or if you plan to move the trees. If you don't plan to move the trees, original's fine, but if you want to move the trees around and have it all dynamic, you need to switch to relative. Now, add the proximity node, and you should be good to go. Instance to target, distance to density. But you'll see you get an error. If we read this error, it says instances and inputs geometry are ignored. That's because unlike a object info, a collection info only brings it in as an instance, not as geometry. So we need to convert this collection into geometry by realizing the instance to make it into geometry, and then it works. Now, let's get some more space here. We are going to put an instance on points. Bring in our shrooms. Separate children and reset them. Put them in instance and make sure to select pick instances so they're all separated. Otherwise, they're going to be clustered like this. Now, you'll see that this might not be what you wanted. The shrooms are kind of running away from the trees when you want them to be on the trees. So let's put up a little space between these two nodes here, the geometry proximity and the distributed points on faces, and add a map range node. Now, this one's kind of tricky. Unlike your color ramp, where you can visually see it, you have to think of this number-wise. So first of all, we're going to switch this to smoother step to have a smoother transition. So 0 to 1 is going to be converted to 0 to 1. So nothing is changing. It's just telling, it's creating a 0 to 1 range within here. So right now next to the trees is 0, maximum's 1 away from the trees. We want to invert that, so 1 to 0. And we see we've inverted it. Now they're close to the trees, but they are, there's not many. We want it to be a little bit more, so we can increase that value to, say, around 3.9 or 4. We're just going to round that to 4. And now there's mushrooms on our trees that if we move our trees, because we kept the trees in relative, mushrooms will grow right underneath it. Now we could stop there, but we also, if you notice, like, these are all more or less rotated the same direction. You can see these two right here. They're rotated the same direction. In fact, I'm going to change the seed a little bit to try to get a different outcome. So what we need to do in this instance is we need to randomize the rotation and randomize the scale. So let's go, it's going to be in instances, rotate instances, scale instances. So we're going to do our rotation first. We're going to add a random value. It is going to be a vector value. We don't need X and Y, we just need Z. Put that into the rotation and then randomize the Z as much as possible. And now it's gonna randomize every instance's rotation. That's that done. We can now clean this one up a little bit to make more room. And now we're gonna add the scale instances, and the same thing, we are going to add another random value. This time we're gonna keep it on float. We're gonna put it into scale, and we're gonna make it 0.5 to 1, or 1.5. No, just 1. Maybe a bit lower so that we can see it a bit better. So now we have a randomized scale and randomized rotation. If we want, we could add more around by increasing this toMin value. And from there, we're pretty much done. We can now move our trees around. If we wanted to, we could also have this collection be rocks, be other dead trees, dead leaves, stuff like that. Or we could invert it by doing what we did previously by having the map range be the opposite. So if I were to show an example, let me just mute this one and put in another map range node. If I were to increase this one down here, it'll increase around it. And if I were to increase the from max up above the second one, it'll separate them a bit more from the trees to make sure they stay properly away from it. And you can play around. You'll see how it looks like. And you'll see, like, okay, now we have mushrooms all around our trees, but not on our trees. And if we are to move our trees, they'll get out of the way. You could do this with, say, if you have a car on the road and you don't want grass or mushrooms to grow on it, or whatever, you could have it be inverted this way. So that's just a little fun tip. We're gonna mute that and bring back the other one. And that is the basics of how to do that. So I'm just gonna start cleaning things up a little bit. But no, I like to add these note here so I can know, okay, this one goes up here and goes into this one. This one goes down here, goes into that one. If you were to look at my original show, Geometry Nodes, you'll see I have the same organization style. So anyways, that's it for today's tutorial. This has been growing mushrooms around an object, but you can, again, switch this out to be whatever you want so it works in functionality. This is just a theory. And obviously this can be expanded and applied with other things. So hope you learned, stick around, subscribe for more, and see you later.